a glum, glum pumpkin, and there's some crumb dumpling wrong with me. There's no song with me. Oh, can't you see that?
Car 44. Car 44. Roscoe speaking. Sergeant, sir, you may find this difficult to believe, but I have just witnessed something unique. I have just observed the following. One jogger, male, exceeding the speed limit by at least 30 miles an hour. One pumpkin color, also exceeding the speed limit by at least 20 miles an hour. One cat colored, disturbing the peace. Three ghosts, one with four wheels. Wheels, not feet. No, sir. There is no record of insanity in my family. No, sir. Not until today, that is.
Hello there everyone, welcome to Dramatis Sermo, the Halloween special! Woo! Spooky noises, woohoo, trick or treat or...
Yes, and lots of laughing!
Yes. As promised, we are about to tackle the Halloween special of Raggedy Ann and Andy by Chuck Jones. We already reviewed the Christmas special from 1978, so it's time for the subsequent Halloween special of 1979. I am your host, Madhog, thy ghoulish master.
And I am devilish Akvaronish.
I don't get it.
I was trying to put devilish in there.
Well,
but...
at least you tried.
That's what Raggedy Ann would be happy for.
Yes, at least you tried. And you know what? They tried, and I think they succeeded this time.
Yeah, I think so too.
In fact, I want to right off the bat point out what are the differences in quality between this special and the previous one. As we established last time, we don't actually have to do a lot of preamble this time around. The Christmas special was a pretty average, pretty straightforward special with a surprisingly good message at the end that was ultimately rather clunky in the execution. There is a lot of characters staring at the screen and at the audience, explaining what the plot is.
Yeah.
And there is a hell of a lot more of Les Tremayne than any doctor would dare to recommend.
Yeah.
If you ask me, the Halloween special, which is also Chuck Jones directed, it's about as charming as the Christmas special, but I think it's superior in almost every other way.
It definitely feels like that, like it's a bit more honed and polished, this one, compared to the other one.
I noticed a improvement in the animation quality in this one. Maybe it had a better budget. Definitely the character animation is much better, tends to be a lot more organic, and complements the scene and the comedic timing a lot better. The writing also is much better. It isn't just better compared to The Great Santa Claus Caper. I think it's better than most Halloween specials that have ever been made. In fact, I dare say this is one of the best Halloween specials ever made, in my opinion. Then again, the bar for that tends not to be really high.
I mean, what else is there to challenge that trophy? Charlie Brown? You see what I mean, right? There's not very many takers for that trophy.
No, not really.
Raggedy Ann and Andy, though, compared to most Halloween specials, definitely does feel a lot more whole as a narrative.
It's whole and wholesome. Like I said, the writing is much better. Not only is much better, but it is also legitimately funny. Everyone in this special provides quite a unique performance that facilitates a wholesome night of laughter on the audience's part.
For me, it was more of an amused grin at times.
Yes, well, there were a few laugh-out-loud moments, for me at least.
There was one laugh-out-loud moment for me.
Before we start recounting the events in the Halloween special of Raggedy Ann and Andy, cheers!
Yes, cheers. But it's not a musical adventure.
Yes, it is especially much better and much more whole than a musical adventure could ever hope to be. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure.
The story and ultimately the moral that this special goes for tends to be fairly atypical for the genre, the very specific genre of Halloween specials that is, because it chooses not to pursue the usual motif, shall we say, the marketable Halloween themes, which is to say, the scary, spooky stuff.
I was going to say, recounting the history of how Halloween came to be.
Also that, but mostly the spooky, scary stuff. Or spoopy. You know, if you're in 2015.
Whichever one still is, apparently.
Okay. Everybody wishes they were still in 2015, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what the special chooses to pursue thematically is more akin to recontextualizing the Halloween festivity as a celebration of childhood. And it's about just that, childhood, and about the fact that you don't need to be a child to experience the joy and innocence of childhood, even if you're a jaded adult. And I have to say, that makes it for quite a special, for lack of a better word. Which is strange, because that's usually reserved for a Christmas special. You know, that kind of wholesome innocence and joy of childhood message and all that jazz.
Basically, hey, even if you're an adult, the magic is never gone of that season of Christmas.
Yes,
but
because
case,
of that, it is quite refreshing to see that message applied to Halloween. Because, like I said, it's not very marketable to focus on that if it's Halloween. But, it's all about the spoopy stuff.
Well, yeah, true. And it would kind of make sense, really, considering that most adults wouldn't take Halloween as a very serious festivity.
But that was never the point, was it? To be serious.
No.
I mean, most people don't even know what the origins of Halloween are. Everybody knows where Christmas comes from, even if you add a pagan Saint Nicholas in it. But nobody knows where Hell of Eves really is from or what it's meant to celebrate. And it has absolutely nothing to do with what it is right now. It was a festivity about harvest or something like that. And I believe it comes from Ireland. And there was not even a pumpkin originally.
It was a turnip, actually.
It was a turnip, yes. It was the Halloween turnip.
Yeah, so essentially, Halloween was essentially an Irish thing, where basically a superstition where people who are harvesting thought demons would steal the crop, essentially, I believe.
The modern incarnation of Halloween could not possibly be more different from its alleged origins. But it doesn't matter, you know why? Because Halloween should be really about going out and having fun, being a kid, ask for candy, and if they do not give you candy, you can act like a pest, because it's the one night a year you can do that. You can be a child and have fun.
And not like Christmas, where you have to be a good person.
First, you need to be a bad person so that you can appreciate how being good feels like.
That's why Halloween's here, for us to be bad on that one night, so that we can appreciate being good.
We're off to a great start, okay. So, this is the Raggedy Ann and Andy last TV special, by Chuck Jones at least, and last period.
Yeah.
The Pumpkin Who Wouldn't Smile. Okay, so we begin with the most horrible thing I've ever seen, which is this hacked up, horribly edited introduction, which is nothing but a few scenes from the actual special, poorly cut out and edited together to look even remotely like a presentation, and it's about as jarring as it is confusing to look at.
Yeah, especially since all it's just there is it's just to introduce the characters and who voices those characters.
Yes, June Foray and Mr. Butler do reprise their roles as Anne and Andy.
For better or for worse.
For better and for best. What are you talking about? They are perfectly cast for those roles. Yeah. There is nothing inherently wrong about this. And speaking of nothing inherently wrong, Les Tremayne is back as a sad pumpkin. The titular pumpkin who wouldn't smile. They should really call it the pumpkin who was a super emo and depressed everybody. Poor
whiny,
pumpkin.
My gosh. Pumpkin.
Yes, it's the whiniest pumpkin in the universe. Remember when Alexander G. Wolfe broke down in tears and cried and started talking like this? That's the pumpkin.
Yes.
That is the sad pumpkin for 20 minutes. I hope you enjoy that.
No. It does get kind of grating after a while, though.
Yes, but the special is actually refreshingly very much self-aware about that.
Yeah, it is aware about that, that's for sure.
In fact, speaking of that, I mentioned how the writing is much better. It is much better partly because it is far more comedy-oriented and it is much more self-aware. Whereas the last year's special was only self-aware when it came to talk down to the audience.
Yeah.
There is a lot less talking down to the audience in this one. The dialogues feel a lot more organic, especially the various exchanges in between Anne and Andy, as we'll get to them.
I think we've done talk about the hacked up intro, essentially.
There isn't much to say about that. It's just a few scenes awfully cut down and edited together by some sort of hack job editor that shall not receive treats, only tricks this year, let me tell you. And then the special properly starts. With the said pumpkin crying a whole lot. And when he cries
pumpkin seeds.
That's a nice detail.
That is really nice and probably is going to grow more pumpkins.
Oh no, they are multiplying. Also, the implications are quite dire because the seeds are basically inside of him. So it's like he's crying blood.
Yeah, but again, isn't he hollowed out? So that means he shouldn't have them anymore, but yet he still cries them.
I mean, if you want to go down that path, he doesn't even look like a pumpkin, he looks like a gourd. Maybe that's the problem. He's a gourd. That's why nobody wants him at Halloween.
He's a confused gourd.
Oh, gender identity issues. This special is deep.
Gosh.
You waltzed right into that, Devar. Thank you for that.
God dang it.
Okay, so we are also introduced to the said pumpkin's neighbor, the most sympathetic character in the short, a mouse.
Who is just nodding and shaking its head.
Yes, he tries to console him, or at least to hear him out, up until he's just fed up with his constant whining, so he ends up renting his hole and leaving with a briefcase and everything.
That was really amusing.
Yes, that's already. It's details like this that put this special on a pedestal compared to the previous one. It is better in almost every way. Again, if you don't count the really hack job they did in the editing department here and there, not just when it comes to the opening, mind you. I mean, it's kind of painful to look at how much effort and passion was poured into this animation, only for it to be partially compromised by some lazy editing.
Yeah, oh well, we can't have everything, sadly.
So whilst the pumpkin is still occupying himself by crying tears of seed,
yeah, tears of seeds down his feces.
Oh boy, that's a fanfiction waiting to happen.
Yeah, and
we slowly pan towards the nearby town, for it is Halloween night.
And everyone is off trick-or-treating, going trick-or-treat, and like the same kids going to the same houses every year.
If you look at the opening title credits, again, mentioning one last time the hacked up opening, the various townspeople speaking and their dogs are actually credited as random people and dogs. I think this implies that they must have captured some audio from actual people in the streets and their dogs. But I don't think that's the case. It's too precise. We cut to Raggedy Ann and Andy looking very disgruntled, looking with vengeful intent at the nearby neighborhood house.
Which houses a sad little boy.
Yes, there is a sad little boy, but you know what? Unlike the pumpkin, he's not whining all the time, so he's got that going on for him.
Oh yeah, he definitely has that going.
So anyway, they are giving the nasty eye to the neighborhood house, mostly because they are concerned about the boy, which is named Ralph, and I wonder if it's a callback to Ralph the Wolf.
Probably not, but still.
It's a rather common name, Ralph.
Yeah, true.
Plenty of Ralph to go around. That came out wrong. Okay, so the reason why the sad boy is sad is because Aunt Agatha is the death of fun.
Yes, she definitely is.
She's only on screen for about 2 minutes, but my gosh, she's a riot.
I mean, she's giving Ebenezer Scrooge a run for his money.
That's a nice pun, unintentional too. Okay, so when a couple of kids decide to make the unfortunate decision of going to trick-or-treat on her house, she responds by calling Halloween nothing but bribery, a criminal act, and threatens to call the police on them.
If they try and do any tricks on her.
Yes, and my gosh, she's a piece of work, and I love her.
Yeah. She's definitely playing it straight, that's for sure.
The voice actress plays the character straight, but the actual lines of dialogue are so out there that the contrast makes it even more hilarious than it was intended to be. Which I figure it was not intended to be hilarious to begin with, but it actually was. So, I'm happy.
Everybody's happy.
Oh, Aunt Agatha, we'll get back to you soon enough. Back to the evil dolls.
Of Raggedy Ann and Andy.
Yes, they are discussing a plan of action to save Halloween for that one sad boy and get back at the aunt. Yeah, she'll get hers.
She's got what's coming to her.
Yeah. Raggedy Andy is particularly funny in this one. He is brutal. While discussing a plan of action on how to deal with Aunt Agatha, Andy suggests the option of threatening her with income tax invasion.
I must admit, that one actually took me by surprise that he even touched that.
That's great and always topical. So, and then Anne comes with the sudden realization that all they need to make the boys' Halloween Halloween special, if you will, is to procure a pumpkin. So she yells it out loud, "Pumpkin!" To which Andy responds, "What do you mean, pumpkin? You're always saying pumpkin." Bye-bye, fourth wall. At this point, I like to imagine what their regular conversations are like. Anne and Andy go out to get an ice cream. Andy asks, "Okay, what flavor would you like?" She yells, "Pumpkin!" They're doing crosswords. Andy says, "Okay, so it's a fruit? Pumpkin!" But there are not enough letters for pumpkin. And then he says, "Hey, would you like to see Halloweeny?" And she yells, "Pumpkin weenie!"
Pumpkin weenie!
I have put too much thought into this.
I can tell.
This dialogue is so unexpectedly clever.
Yeah, it's really good for what it is.
Before they leave the house in search of the pumpkin, they need to figure out how to carry the pumpkin at this point in time. Ann calls in her secret weapon, and down comes Raggedy Arthur, the bloody dog, on a skateboard, doing some Tony Hawk Pro tricks.
Hey, what can I say? He's been playing that game for hours, so he wants to show off how well he can do those tricks himself.
We just received confirmation that Raggedy Arthur is the Poochie of the Raggedy franchise. Look at him. He's always skating during this entire Halloween special. My gosh. It's not Raggedy Arthur. They should rename him into Totally Rad Arthur. Totally Rad Arthur.
You mean totally Raggedy Arthur?
No, I'm sorry. I have to flunk your idea.
No, seriously, it's Raggedy.
Okay, you lost it immediately, never mind. I'm having so much fun narrating this, you have no idea. Okay, so the trio of Raggedy Ann, Andy, and Totally Rad Arthur...
Raggedy Arthur.
Whatever, embark on a mission to find the perfect pumpkin for a sad little boy.
Yeah.
And of course, they come across the titular pumpkin who wouldn't smile, which has been crying this entire time. At this point, there are so many seeds around it.
It's probably made another pile for another harvest. I have to say one thing that I really liked while they were actually journeying to get the pumpkin. Raggedy Andy came up with an idea as they were walking, and it caught me off guard that he would recommend it. Why don't we just steal a pumpkin? And I'm like, what?
Raggedy Andy.
Yeah, Raggedy Andy recommended, why don't we steal a pumpkin? And Anne was all like, no, we can't do that.
Although
That'd
she
be wrong."
considered it for a second. It's more like she was saying that to herself more than Andy. No, that's wrong. Stealing is wrong. But brainwashing people while they are asleep with hypnotic suggestion is totally A-okay. And we'll get to that later.
Yes, we will. The reason Anne decided not to go for that option is because another boy would be so sad. Well, another child, she said, actually.
No, actually, something weird happens earlier on in which she was about to say the word child, but she stops herself and said kid instead.
Yeah, I never got that.
That was weird, and I have to wonder if June Foray actually flubbed a line and corrected herself and they did not bother to edit it. Which, again, fits with the motif of good animation, bad editing. Like, for example, that one time in which Raggedy Andy is cut in the middle of a sentence to cut to Anne saying something.
Oh, yeah.
That is so evident. The same argument as before. It saddens me.
Yeah.
They eventually get to the gourd, I mean the pumpkin.
The glum pumpkin. Or should I call him the glumkin?
The glumkin. Okay, sure. So the Les Tremayne glumkin is suddenly very elated at the prospect that I am going to make a child happy.
Yeah, but suddenly the glum pumpkin is smiling a lot.
The mouse is long gone by this point.
Probably for the best.
Okay, so the reason why they needed Arthur for this, they really did not need him so much as they needed his skateboard. So the
Yes.
great idea here is to transport the glumkin using a skateboard. I should point out at this point that the pumpkin is currently located atop a fairly steep hill. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, surely nothing will go possibly wrong at all.
And then, the most amazing pumpkin loose on a skateboard doll chase sequence begins.
Oh yeah, they definitely do a chase sequence.
They clearly use this chase sequence to pad out the length of the special, but you know what? I'm not complaining. I was delighted the entire time.
It's definitely a lot more entertaining and amusing, more so than nonchalantly going back down the hill with no problems.
I mean, it goes on for a long time, but there is a lot happening during it. For starters, they all chased the pumpkin, I'm sorry, I meant to say the glumpkin, on a skateboard as it goes through a guy's house, as said guy, random guy, opens up the door to his house. The pumpkin goes through it, and then the dolls come after it, saying hello to the guy, as he just stares at them all with the deadest of deadpan expressions. And then he looks at the camera and says, "Nice costumes." And that's about it.
that made me giggle actually a bit. When he said that.
It is physical, reaction-based comedy at its finest. Simply describing it cannot do it justice. You need to watch it for yourself. But let it be known that Chuck Jones might be one of the best at this very specific kind of humor, at reactions, specifically to goofy situations, as we'll see more of along the way. Do you remember that one Looney Tunes episode from the 50s in which everybody reacts differently to the smallest elephant in the world?
I think I have a vague memory of that one.
Yes, that entire short was about people reacting to the elephant. It didn't have so much a plot as just people, random people, reacting to the fact that there is a very small elephant and they all do it differently. And the comedy erupts from those different reactions. So during the chase, all the dolls end up accidentally bumping into the classic white sheets that are inexplicably out drying at night.
Speaking of which, actually, this guy has not only a wagon that they just stole, but they also stole 2 unicycles from this guy.
They re-emerged from the house with monocycles. So they are riding monocycles while they are covered in white sheets.
So let me get this straight, Raggedy Ann. We're not going to steal a pumpkin, but it's okay to steal a wagon and 2 unicycles.
A jogger, which was inexplicably dressed like a Greek philosopher?
Yeah.
Maybe it was just a costume, but anyway. A jogger just passes by, sees them, pretty much
running away.
like Sonic speed, and then all of these people, the jogger, the pumpkin on a skateboard, and the 3 dolls on motorcycles with white sheets on top of them, they pass by a police car with the police officer that looks at all of this, doesn't know how to react, and then decides to report the happening to the local police office.
Yeah. Sir, you're not gonna believe this, but I just saw a jogger. He was going like 30 miles per hour over the speed limit.
And he was chased by a pumpkin on a skateboard and 3 ghosts, I repeat, 3 ghosts on motorcycles.
3 ghosts with wheels.
I love the deadpan expression of the police commissioner as he listens to all of this, only for the aforementioned ghosts and pumpkin to just erupt in his own office right in front of him and pass him by.
That was great. That was great, actually.
Yes, you know what ruins it? The fact that the policeman's sentence afterwards was cut off again by the terrible editing, because otherwise this whole sequence was comedy gold. Again, whomever edited all this, they made some pretty terrible mistakes.
Untidy jobs.
Anyway, so they finally, after all of that, they car crash their way to their allotted destination.
And they all start laughing.
Yes, haha, we almost died today. That was fun. Let's do it again.
Well, the pumpkin has a chance of dying, but Raggedy Ann and Andy be fine as long as they don't, end up getting their fluff unfluffed out of their bodies, I guess.
You know, this is how my brain works. As soon as you painted that mental image to me, I thought that Goat Simulator needs a Raggedy Ann mode. In which the goat is replaced by Raggedy Ann or Andy.
If you saw the scene where Raggedy Andy was all
twisted.
That's kind of like how the graphics and the models of Goat Simulator work.
But, jokes aside, I really, really enjoy these characters. I think Andy and Anne have slowly but surely become personal favorites of mine. They did not just brought joy to my jaded, dark heart with this nostalgic chase sequence, but they also had fun themselves doing it.
Yeah, it's very nice.
So they managed to lift up the gourd kin to the room of the boy.
Yeah, after some sick, sweet moves by Arthur to get the pulley up the tree.
To show off how Poochie he is.
Yes. Show off him twirling around Raggedy Ann and Andy at one point.
Yes, the animation for him is actually quite good. I like how confidently he finishes his sick moves by crossing his legs. Looking all cool. Arthur, calm yourself. The 90s aren't due for 11 more years.
Raggedy Arthur foretold the 90s.
Totally raggedy, Arthur. Damn it, Devar. Okay, so the boy is finally reunited for the first time with the pumpkin.
Oh, you're the most beautifulest pumpkin I've ever seen.
I love you. Well, this turned into a weird fanfiction.
I mean, he takes the pumpkin to bed with him too.
And he hugs him so tightly. Also, he makes the weirdest facial expressions too.
Yes, he does. Just for the pumpkin. I mean, it's like if Kevin Owens was hugging Sami Zayn really tight.
Well, it's happening. It has happened. Oh, this is said pumpkin and is my best friend. The boy is happy now. The pumpkin is happy. Everybody's happy except for
Raggedy
one.
Ann.
Well, I was going to say Aunt Agatha because now we have the real climax. And oh boy, do I love this sequence. So essentially, the way that Anne puts it, it sounds like they were going to kill Aunt Agatha, smothering her with their pillow or beating her up to death. We have some unfinished business. And Andy seems to be ready for a fight, because he loves to fight, fighting around the world and all that.
I should mention at this point, actually, my sweetheart was watching this with me, my fiancée. She asked me the question, why does Raggedy Andy sound like he's drunk? And looks it.
Especially when he pulls out a banjo out of nowhere and starts playing it with the doofiest expression.
We'll get to why he's doing that.
So this is actually sort of creepy. They sneak in Aunt Agatha's room and freaking Raggedy Ann also slowly approaches her from behind like a monster coming out of her bed. And starts whispering hypnotic suggestions in her ear, while Andy pulls out a banjo again out of nowhere and starts playing it. With a seductive face, I guess I can put it like that.
It's his you wanna bang face.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it hasn't stopped Chucky, so I guess.
Oh gosh.
I actually want to see that crossover now.
No.
Raggedy Ann and Andy versus Chucky the Killer Doll.
Oh gosh.
I mean, they did use the Annabelle doll for The Conjuring, so... Oh boy. So essentially, by brainwashing Aunt Agatha with hypnotic suggestions, they convince her that being a kid is good, being a jaded adult is bad. So go celebrate Halloween with your nephew.
So then you could be reminding of yourself of what it's like to being a child and let go of all your adult issues.
Essentially. So I guess the moral is that brainwash saves Halloween?
Yes?
It's good?
Maybe?
Well, okay, I'm just being slightly facetious here, but...
Yes, I'm being silly.
But this was genuinely funny. So the special concludes with Aunt Agatha dressed as a witch, which was the costume she used to have when she was 9. I'm surprised it still fits her, considering.
I wonder how she got all that. Did she just cut up the curtains really quick? Or did she just decide to wear the 9-year-old outfit?
Wow, she must have been quite big when she was 9. So she and Ralph and the
pumpkin
who could smile, they go out trick-or-treating. By the way, Ralphie is dressed like a mustached pirate.
I love his mustache, by the way.
It's nice. And the special concludes and finishes with Raggedy Ann and Andy giving us a merry hallow and a happy ween, apparently. This was such a joyful, fun watch.
Despite some minor issues, which is just basically
the hack editing, yes.
Yeah, the hack editing at times. At one point, you feel like the whining could grate on you, but from the pumpkin, that is.
But they know when to stop with that.
But overall, it's a very good watch. I would say it's very funny and fun to watch. And it's definitely a refreshing take on Halloween. I mean, it's no wonder the American people actually hold this Halloween special in high regard.
Don't just watch it during Halloween, watch it at any point in time during the year. It's guaranteed to put a big ol' smile on your sad, jaded, depressed face. That's all I have to say about that. Merry Hallow and Happy Ween to all of you. This has been Madhog the ghoulish master of the net.
And I have been devilish Vakvaron.
It works even better the second time.
Yeah, and joined by Raggedy Arthur.
Totally rad! Skateboards away.
Skateboards all over your house.
And Anne yells pumpkin for no real reason.
Pumpkin!
Pumpkin! Okay, bye now. Have a safe night.
Yeah, good night, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Spooky night.
Car 44. Roscoe speaking. Sergeant, sir, you may find this difficult to believe, but I have just witnessed something unique, I think, in the annals of crime.
There are some downright freakishly scary things that reside in this world. Some are well known, and some are not. Whether you believe in the supernatural or you don't, many reported cases of paranormal activity still seem to intrigue and mystify. Hauntings are most usually related to places, houses, or cemeteries, and sometimes even people. But what if an object other than these is reportedly haunted, say a supposedly simple, benign doll, for instance? Would you believe it was true? Annabelle was the focus of a case that got the attention of famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. They became interested in Annabelle in the early 1970s. This episode in their career was included in the book The Demonologist by Gerald Brittle about the Warrens. It has been stated that this is one of the most unusual cases of a possessed object on record. This is Annabelle's story. In 1970, a mother, doting on her only daughter, purchased a Raggedy Ann doll from an antique store. The cute red-headed little doll was a present for her daughter, Donna. Donna was, at that time, residing with her roommate, Angie, in a small apartment and preparing to graduate from college. Thinking nothing more of the doll than that it was a sign of her mother's affection, she placed the doll on her bed in her room and basically forgot about it. As time passed, both Angie and Donna noticed an air of strangeness about the doll. Apparently the doll would move. These were relatively subtle movements at first, like a change in position, but as time passed, the movements became more noticeable. The doll was even found once standing upright, leaning against a chair, with its legs crossed. After a while, the doll was said to have actually changed rooms. It would be left in the living room before Donna left for work, and upon returning, it would be found on her bed, in her room. A moving doll? Very strange indeed. About a month later, Donna began to find what she thought were penciled messages. They appeared to be written in the handwriting of a small child, scribbled and almost illegible on a parchment paper. It could be seen that the messages clearly stated, "Help us," or "Help Lou." Donna was uncertain of exactly who the "us" was. Apparently Donna has never kept that type of paper in the house either, so where did the paper come from? Could it have been conjured by the doll itself? Could a doll possibly be writing messages? If so, how? Donna came home one night to find the doll had moved once again. Only this time, Donna felt as though something was off. A menacing presence seemed to emanate from the doll, and she had the deepest urge to inspect it for some reason. What she found would haunt her forever. The doll had blood on it. Blood, or what seemed to be blood. A liquid-like red substance appeared on both the back of its hands and its chest. Now completely scared and desperate for help, Donna decided it was time to seek an expert. Something was going on, and she wanted answers. Determined to get to the bottom of things, Donna decided to contact a medium. The medium agreed, and a séance was held. Apparently there was in fact a spirit taking up residence in the doll, and her name was Annabelle Higgins. From what the medium could determine, Annabelle Higgins was a young girl of only 7 when her lifeless body was found in the field upon which the apartment complex now stands. The details of her death never came to light. The so-called spirit basically took up residence in the doll and wanted to stay. Seeing no harm in it, and feeling sorry for what the spirit had experienced in life, Donna agreed. The true nature of this entity had yet to be revealed. Lou, a friend of Donna's, was less than thrilled with the doll. On numerous occasions, Lou warned Angie that the doll felt threatening and sinister. Something was off, and Lou knew it. Lou's dislike of the doll was well known. He would have more than one terrifying experience with Annabelle. Here is the story of Lou's experience as related by the Warrens themselves. Lou awoke one night from a deep sleep and in panic. Once again, he had had a reoccurring bad dream, only this time, somehow, something seemed different. It was as though he was awake, but couldn't move. He looked around the room, but couldn't discern anything out of the ordinary. And then it happened. Looking down towards his feet, he saw the doll. Annabelle. It began to slowly glide up his leg, move over his chest, and then stopped. Within seconds, the doll was strangling him. Paralyzed and gasping for breath, Lou, at the point of asphyxiation, blacked out. Lou awoke the next morning, certain it wasn't a dream. Lou was determined to rid himself of that doll and the spirit that possessed it. Lou, however, would have one more terrifying experience with Annabelle. Preparing for a road trip the next day, Lou and Angie were reading over maps alone in her apartment. The apartment seemed eerily quiet. Suddenly, rustling sounds coming from Donna's room aroused fear that someone had possibly broken into the apartment. Lou, determined to figure out who or what it was, quietly made his way to the bedroom door. He waited for the noises to stop before entering and turning on the light. The room was empty, except for Annabelle, whom was tossed on the floor in the corner. Lou scoured the room for forced entry, but nothing was out of place. But as he got close to the doll, he got the distinct impression that somebody was behind him. Spinning around, he was quick to realize that nobody else was there. Then, in flash, he found himself grabbing for his chest, doubled over, cut and bleeding. His shirt was stained with blood, and upon opening his shirt, there on his chest was what looked to be 7 distinct claw marks, 3 vertical and 4 horizontal. All were hot like burns. These scratches healed almost immediately. Half gone the next day, and fully gone by day 2. Annabelle, The Curse of the Devil Doll, Warrens.net, 2010. As the entity finally revealed its true purpose in nature. Usually claw marks in a paranormal situation relates to a demonic entity. Demonic entities usually lead to cases of possession. The doll may just be a temporary anchor to the physical world. Possession of a human body may be its true intent. A human possession would make it almost impossible for the demon to be extricated from our world, making the interaction between the spiritual and physical worlds much easier to manipulate. Due to the nature of Lou's experiences, the doll was no longer believed to be a docile spirit, but inhuman and demonic in nature. Donna decided to contact a priest. Bringing in the big guns seemed like the best way to go. Father Hegan was the priest they contacted. With his help, their case was referred to paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Ed and Lorraine Warren immediately took interest in the case and contacted Donna concerning the doll. The Warrens, after speaking with Donna, Angie, and Lou, came to the immediate conclusion that the doll itself was not in fact possessed, but manipulated by an inhuman presence. Spirits do not possess inanimate objects like houses or toys. They possess people. An inhuman spirit can attach itself to a place or object, and this is what occurred in the Annabelle case. The spirit manipulated the doll and created the illusion of it being alive in order to get recognition. Truly, the spirit was not looking to stay attached to the doll. It was looking to possess a human host. The spirit or in this case, inhuman demonic spirit, was essentially in the infestation stage of the phenomenon. It first began moving the doll around the apartment by means of teleportation to arouse the occupants' curiosity in hopes that they would give it recognition. Then, predictably, the medium was brought into the apartment to communicate with it. The inhuman spirit was now able to communicate through the medium and preyed on the girl's emotional vulnerabilities by pretending to be a rather harmless, lost young girl. During the seance, it was allowed permission to haunt the apartment insofar as a demon is a negative spirit. It then set about causing patently negative phenomena to occur. It aroused fear through the doll's weird movements, brought about materialization of disturbing handwritten notes, created symbolic drops of blood on the doll, and ultimately attacked Lou, leaving behind the symbolic mark of the beast. The next stage of the infestation phenomenon would have been complete human possession. Had these experiences lasted another 2 or 3 more weeks, the spirit would have completely possessed, if not harmed or killed, one or all of the occupants in the house. Annabelle, The Curse of the Devil Dolls, Warrens.net, 2010. An actual exorcism was conducted on the doll before they left, hoping it would rid Annabelle of the infectious demon. Upon the conclusion of the investigation, Ed and Lorraine decided the best course of action to prevent the spirit from doing further harm was to relieve Donna of its presence and to take the doll home with them. They weren't completely sure if the doll had been exorcised. I hope you enjoyed this recounting of this tale. Should you ever want to visit the famous Annabelle, she can be found at the Warren Occult Museum in Moodus, Connecticut. The museum is run by Lorraine Warren, the famous paranormal investigator, and now frequent guest on the television show Paranormal State. Warren relates that Annabelle still moves about occasionally, and is still known to make growling noises at unsuspecting visitors.